Karen here again. Sorry I've been absent for a while. Christmas took over my life for a few weeks there. So now I've got it all under control. So I'm back scrapbooking again. This is a layout I started actually weeks ago. Starting with this beautiful floral paper from, I think it's the Midnight collection from Cocoa Vanilla, which I've just covered in clear gesso. And I'm now going to use this 12 by 12 stencil and some of the Vicky Bouton iridescent glaze just to create a bit of texture over the paper. And I'm doing a photograph there of Jenny and her family. This was the day that Alyssa turned 6 months, so I wanted to do them a picture. This is actually going to go into a shadow box for a Christmas present for them to go on their wall, I hope. So I'm just building up the layers behind the photo now. So I've got that really pretty blue music note paper, which is just from a scrap from my stash in my stash box. I just thought the colour worked quite well, that with a bit of blue on there. So I'm just ruffling up the edges with my texture tool, and then I'm going to put a bit of this white tissue paper, a couple of layers of white tissue paper behind that. So that's all been stuck down, and then I'm going to decide what do I do next. So I picked out this piece of paper. It's a Jan Hadfield paper. I can't remember what the collection is. It's her most recent collection, and it was in one of my hip kits. I think the October hip kit it came out of. But the colour was just so perfect to back this photograph that I thought I'd use this to do the final layer. I'm just trimming that down, and this is the way it looks. I think it goes really well with the backing, with the background, which is the walls on there in their living room. And then I've picked out that I've got these little chipboard frames, or frame corners, I suppose, by a company called Skrapiniec, if that's how you pronounce it. I think it's a Polish company. Very, very delicate, very thin chipboard, beautifully cut. You have to be quite careful when you're taking it out of the backing paper. You probably should use a knife of some sort, but I'm not very good with knives. So I just very delicately and carefully popped it out of its background. It's called cross stitch frames or something like that, because you can see the little crosses in there. Looks a bit like cross stitch, and I just thought it was so pretty to frame this photograph. I couldn't get a frame big enough that would just go all the way around, but actually the two corners work really well. So now I'm working on my background paper again. I'm not going to show you too much of this because I end up changing the background paper after I finished applying quite a lot of mists and paints. I actually didn't like it, or I didn't like it for what I was doing it for. I do like the background, and I might use it for a layout for myself, but I didn't actually find it worked. I started off using a Shimmer's Mist in a deep blue sea, which is the paler colour there because I've watered it down a lot. And then this is a Dylusions Mist, the darker blue, in After Midnight. And I decided by the time I'd applied it, I thought it was actually a bit too much. So there's quite a lot of blue on there, and I decided I didn't think they'd like it. So I put that aside to rethink things, and then I'm just putting some white gesso on the chipboard frame here, because I just think that makes it pop a little bit more from the background. I thought the white, because although it's a very pale wood, I still think it needed to pop a little bit more, so I wanted to make it more white. So I'm just applying that to the other little corner there. And this is the new backing paper. It was a few days later. I picked this out. It's little grey hearts all over it. I really liked it. I thought it was very suitable for the for the picture. Lots of little hearts. And this is another piece of from my scrap stash, really old piece of paper I've had for a long time, and it's just some excuse me, it's just some writing all over the page. I just thought it would make quite a nice background, and I just wanted another layer, an extra layer, to pop in between the photo and the blue backing paper. Just trimming down my background paper, which I've also covered in blue gesso, in clear gesso, ready to apply some mixed media. So I will be doing some mixed media. I've just decided to do something a bit different than I had originally planned. So I'm just finishing off the getting the photo layers all completed, just ruffling up the edge of this one as well, this blue one, with my tool. because I think it just softens the whole thing a little bit, just to have that ruffled up a bit. And I'm going to put some, I will be putting some craft foam on the back. I think on the back of the whole thing afterwards. I think I've decided. I was originally going to do a layer in between, but I think I must have forgotten to do that. So I had to add 2 layers to the back in the end. And now I'm just going to stick down this lovely little chipboard corner. I really like these because they're so delicate, but they give it a real point of interest. I think they really highlight the photo there. I really like those. And I love this picture of the family. Little Alyssa is just laughing her head off. She was in such a good mood that day. So there we are. I'll put 1 layer of craft foam on. I will be adding some more at a little bit later date. But now I'm going back to my background paper. This time I'm using some acrylic paint. This is some Dylusions paint. It's the periwinkle blue mixed with a bit of the white. And I'm just going to do a big splodge of blue as my background this time. But by the time you put the photo back on, you don't really see an awful lot of it. And I'm also going to apply this iridescent glaze again with the same stencil that I used before, but this time over the top of the blue. I thought it would actually look a bit more interesting and it would show up a little bit better on the blue. You don't see a great deal of it. It's just sticking out a little bit around the photograph, which is probably a good thing because it does smudge a bit. When I take off the template, it has smudged a bit because this glaze is not very thick and it just oozed a bit underneath, but it doesn't really matter. It just gives it that little bit of interest around the photograph. And I'm trimming it down a little bit more so I can back it on some dark grey cardstock, which will give the whole thing a little bit more strength and structure. So there we are, stuck that onto the cardstock as a background. And I'm going to apply a little bit of mist. This is the Heidi Swapp Colour Shine in Tinsel, which is a dark grey and doesn't actually show up as much as I'd hoped. I thought it might give it a little bit more of a sparkly look, but it doesn't really. Maybe I didn't shake it up enough, but it did start to leak when I was shaking it, so I had to stop. So I'm just going to dry that off with a kitchen towel, and you can just see a little bit there. It doesn't really have much of an effect. But you know, the more you add, the more it adds a little bit of dimension. And now I'm going to try the Dylusions in the white linen. This is the white mist. I'm just going to put a few splatters of that around as well. It shows up a little bit more than the grey did. And just seeing how it looks, just testing it out again. And as you can see, I've added some foam squares as well as the craft foam. I've added some squares of self-adhesive foam, but I'm going to have to use the glue gun to adhere it to the background, because with all that paint and all the other bits and pieces on there, I thought it needed the adhesive wouldn't be strong enough. I've had these squares for quite a while, and there's no way that the adhesive would work for very long. So I'm adding some liquid glue there from the glue gun just to make sure it sticks on. So the next thing I'm going to do now is the fun part, which is when I'm going to add a whole load of flowers. The dark blue ones and the grey ones you can see on the right, they're all by 49 and Market. They do a beautiful range of flowers in different colours. And you get, as well as the flowers, you get these little twirly bits of wire and seed heads and a bit of some leaves. And then these lighter blue ones are from Dusty Attic. So I thought they made quite a nice mixture, because the lighter blue go quite well with the background, but I thought the dark blue ones were really needed to really make it all pop from the page. So I'm just playing around with all these different colours, sticking with the blues at the moment, trying them out, trying the different shapes and sizes, seeing how they all look. And then I'm going to start. I'm just removing them all now. I've decided I like where they all, roughly where they're all placed. Excuse me, I've got a tickle. And I'm going to use my glue gun to stick all these flowers in place now. Because it works really well with these bits of wire as well. And all these bits are quite dimensional, these wiry bits and the seed heads and all that. Wouldn't be very easy to use these on a conventional scrapbook page because they'd just be too deep. They'd stick out too much. But on this, because I'm going to use a shadow box, so it's quite a deep frame that I'm going to put it in, I'm just going for dimension sort of as much as possible. And also a lot of the flowers have quite a big head in the middle, and they'd stick out too much on a normal in a sleeve in an album. But in the frame, they'll work beautifully. So now I'm getting out these grey ones as well, because I think they work quite well as a neutral, and they pick out the grey in the background. There's some grey in the picture. So I think the little grey flowers, and it's one pack, but it's lots of different sizes, and they come with a few leaves of their own as well, or that you have to stick them together. So you stick the little flowers to their leaves, and then they can go on the page. So that top left corner is pretty much done. Now I'm working on my other cluster, my smaller cluster on the bottom right. Again, just arranging flowers around the corner. I'm going to start, as I did with the other corner, with this slightly curly, soft-looking leaf. So they do quite curl up. So I'm just putting the glue down the middle, so it still maintains some of the dimension on that leaf. And it's all sticking up a little bit. And then I'm going to arrange the flowers around that corner. Sticking in a few of these background bits and pieces as well. There's another little curly piece of wire, and I think there'll be another seed head being popped in there. So this is how they're more or less how they're going to look once they've been stuck down. Just tucking a few things here and there just to see how they look, whether it works. I'm really loving how this is coming together. All the blues and the greys all work really well together. And even the family are all wearing the right colours. They're all coordinating with their own background. I think that was purely by chance, but it makes the whole thing much easier to do and stick to a colour scheme because everything is coordinated. So there we are. So that's all stuck down. Those two corners are stuck down. I'm just adding a few last little grey flowers, just tucking them in the little spots where there looks like there might be a bit of a gap. So I'm happy with those. And the next thing I'm going to work on is the title. I've got this pack from the Midnight collection, and it's called Die Cut Titles. That's fairly obvious. So it's just a load of words which can all be used together to create a title. And I just worked my way through the whole pack, trying to come together or bring together words that I like that work as a title for me. So you can see I'm just auditioning a variety of words. Some have got a capital letter, some haven't, so you can only use them in a certain way. So the happy would have to be the start of a title. That would work, Happy Family. It's not the one I end up with, but so I'll just keep adding them and moving them around. Family Memories. Family Memories sticks for a while. In fact, I think at this point that's what I'm going to use. But the words are quite flat. They're just cut out of quite thin cardstock, so I would have to build them up a bit to make them stand out. I'm just working on I've got this little tray or little pot with a whole load of labels and words and various die cuts that I just keep handy in case I need to do a date or a little bit of journaling or something like that. So I start off with this label shape, which has got some blue lines around the edge, so it works really well. And that's what I think I'm going to use. And I'm just going through this pack. This is and also from the Midnight collection, and this is the chipboard pieces. So I'm having a look through that as well. And I actually decided that the chipboard word moments, because it's already quite dimensional, I'm going to replace the one I'd originally chosen, and that'll save me having to put it on any kind of foam pads or anything. So going back to my little corner there where I'm thinking about putting this jar of hearts, but it's a bit too pale, doesn't quite work. So I'm decided on this label where I'm going to stamp the date, because the date is actually the day that Alyssa was 6 months. So it's important that they've got that on there so they can always look at it and they'll know exactly how old she is on that day. Unfortunately, my stamping skills were a bit lacking and it didn't come out very well. I didn't really press it hard enough. So then I tried to improve it with a pen, and that didn't work either. So I decided to start again, go back into my pot and get this little scallop circle that I must have die cut a while ago. And the stamping came out better on that one. So I'm now using a bit of dark blue ink just to edge it, give it a little bit of colour. There's quite a lot of white space on this circle, and I've just stamped in the middle, so I am going to need to tuck it right under one of the flowers. You'll see in a moment. I've got this little flower ready to go to go on it, but I'm going to stick this in and tuck it under one of the blue flowers, because I don't really want all that white space showing. It's not really needed. I just really need the date just poking out between the flowers. And I'm going to stick this little grey flower on there at the bottom. And then all you can see then is the date sticking out, just peeking through the flower background. Oh, excuse me. Right, I'm going to just stick on the chipboard word, moments, but the other word, family, is a lot flatter, so that one will need a bit more work to make it stand out so that it's not lost around by the flowers. So I'm going to put some little pieces of foam on that word just to make it stand up a little bit more. There we are. I've just covered it all with little tiny pieces of foam. And pop that on, and then that makes it stand up at the same, more or less the same amount as the other word, and it isn't quite so lost amongst everything else. You need your title to be visible and have it and stand up on its own. A couple of little chipboard hearts, because they were in the pack and they're about the only thing that matched the rest of the layout, so they're sort of in a grey. And this sticker sheet is from one of their previous collections. It's from More Than Words, and there was a couple of labels that I thought worked quite well. One of them is Love, Love, Love. That's the bottom one, and I think the other one says So Much Happy, and that just seemed appropriate. Just wanted a couple of little things on there. So finally, I'm just adding a few pearls just to give it a little bit more shine, a little bit more texture, and a little bit more interest. And that's it done. So it's going to go into a black frame. I hope they enjoy. They like it, and it'll go up in their living room. And I hope you enjoyed watching this layout with me. Do join me again soon, and have a lovely Christmas. Goodbye.